Hello, I'm Charles Moffat, and this is Hatchet by Gary Paulsen, which has a bunch of awards, as does this book. Anyway, now I compared this book in a previous video about this one, in which I basically pointed out that the characters in both books are teenagers, and they both have to survive in the wilderness by themselves. She starts off with her spear, and she gets a bow, and she builds arrows, and she builds various other tools as she progresses and manages to survive on her own for years. Whereas this character is alone in the woods for, no spoilers here, a short amount of time, a relatively short amount of time, but long enough that he could have died easily had it not been for the fact that he started off with a hatchet. So he had a hatchet, he had his windbreaker, and he had the clothes on his back, and he has crash landed in the Canadian wilderness where he has to survive after the pilot of the plane has a heart attack. So this is actually a very good book for anybody who's into survivalism or archery or how to make your own shelter, things like that. It was, quite an interesting and enjoyable book to read. And there is a subplot that I found a little boring. There's a subplot that is mentioned on the back cover, that his parents are getting divorced, and there's, I really didn't care for that. I just felt that was kind of boring. So it is a case of, I could have done without the subplot entirely, and I still would have enjoyed the book actually more without the subplot. But even with that, it is a case of this is still a very good book and worth reading. Now, I first encountered this book when I was living in South Korea and teaching at an English Hagwon. And one of the Americans that was also teaching at the Hagwon, he was in charge of teaching this book to various classes. And I never got around to reading it at the time, but I later picked up a copy of this at a little free library. And I, took it home. It sat on the shelf for over a year or 2 years, whatever. And then eventually I got around to reading it. And I partially, to some extent, reading it because I wanted to compare it to this other book. So that was important as well. But overall, a very good book. If for anybody who's into fishing, hunting, survivalism, building shelters, it was, definitely geared towards a younger audience because the chapters are so short that you can actually read multiple chapters in one sitting without problem. And that, to me, that actually kind of improves the enjoyability when you can just sit down and read multiple chapters all at once. As opposed to some authors who have like ridiculously long chapters, and then it takes you days just to read one chapter because they're just too long. So that's a problem. But yes, I definitely still recommend this book and this one as well. If you want to read both, I definitely recommend both. Yeah, that's all for today. Please like and subscribe. Bye-bye.